The presence of historical monuments and museums in local areas are important. They showcase the rich history of a place's past. Without these, people who are living in the present won't be able to learn and appreciate this. The significance of the area's history could be lost. In this documentary, a group of people, including myself, have come together to talk about different historical landmarks within their own local areas across Scotland.
So for my historical monument, we are here in the town of Golspie, which is roughly 20 minutes from my hometown. We will be ascending up Ben Braggie though in the uppy part of Golspie towards the first Duke of Sutherland monument.
The monument was sculpted in 1837 by Sir Francis Chantry after a massive subscription for across Scotland to put the statue up. The statue was made in several parts and carried up through horse and cart through the paths which I am walking on just now. Can't wait to see the Duke himself.
So we have arrived here at the summit of Ben Braggie, just shy of 400 metres. The weather is not really the best, however, the Duke still stands tall there at 100 feet. George Leveson Gower, obviously the first Duke of Sutherland. He was an ambassador for the French during the French Revolution in the 1760s. You can see here fantastic scenery as the Duke is kind of looking over the land that he did once survey. However magnificent he looks, don't let it fool you, as this man still remains one of the most controversial people in Scottish history.
The first acts of the Highland clearances date back to 1750. Landowners, like the Duke, had rented out farmland, or runrigs, to clans for the previous 500 years. The system in place they had was great, with the runrigs being swapped out every year or so to spread out the use of good and bad soil. Clans though began to dismantle, and landlords discovered new ways to increase their profits, one of which was grazing sheep on their land, which took in more money than crofters' rent. This was met with huge uproar, however the clans did not actually own the land and were then turned out, some extremities of burning their own cottages, which led many without a roof over their heads and food, which eventually left too many starving and freezing to death. These horrible acts inspired much of modern culture, with the famous painting Lass of the Clans, which was said to be inspired by the clearances. Over their 9-year reign, the Duke and Duchess evicted 15,000 people.
So from this picturesque landscape we can see a good portion of the 1.5 million acres that the Duke and Duchess did rule over. Their huge involvement kind of lasted between 1812 and 1820, where they kind of went out to see all the crofters, like how they were living, and reports suggest that the Duke and Duchess were both horrified at how they were living just with overcrowding. So the Duke, what they decided to do was they moved some people abroad from their clans, moving them to places like America and Australia, but he also moved people out to the coastal villages such as Brora, which you can see in the distance there. He kind of felt that they could have a fresh start and start a new trade in fishing. So with his major influence on the area, you're probably wondering how this has a massive effect on the area. And this is a prime example here. These are two stones taken from the actual plinth itself of the statue. You can tell this would be a horrendous job to undertake, as the statue is 100 foot high and it would need major tools.
As of recent, there is no major desire to turn down the statue. There was an attempt though in 1994, but as a local historian puts it, it was shut down quickly due to how much it reminded people of how the world has changed.
Also a funny story that happened last year was in the first lockdown. There was kind of a big movement in tearing down historical statues all across England, and this one was also targeted by a group of Londoners who came up on the train. However, they kind of misjudged the size of this 100 feet tall statue and only took hand tools with them. So to conclude my corner of Scotland with the history of the Duke of Sutherland there and the monument and the effect on the town. However controversial he is still a prominent figure in this area and won't be going for any time soon. Albagubra.
Hi, I'm Laura, and today we're visiting Irvine's most obscure abandoned landmark, the Big Idea. After closing its doors in 2003, the West Coast Science Museum has remained frozen in time for over 18 years, just across the river from the busy Irvine town. Unofficially dubbed the Museum of Scottish Invention, the centre opened in April 2000, after a huge investment of £14 million. The centre was dedicated to Scottish inventions and inventors, and built as an impressive earth-covered attraction on the site of Alfred Noble's former dynamite factory. To reach the big idea, visitors had to cross the Bridge of Scottish Invention, a specially crafted pedestrian bridge across the River Irvine. Carved with the names of many famous inventors, the bridge was unique for the fact that it could retract its middle portion, allowing tall ships to pass through in and out of the marina. Now the bridge lies split, only accessible from the peninsula and in dangerous need of repair, used most often as a diving board for Irvine kids. John Moorhouse, who was the chairman of the Big Idea, said that when it opened, it was going to be the first science centre in the world that ran without ongoing public funding. He said, "I was determined to prove that we could operate a science centre without public subsidy, but I failed. There is not a single science centre which operates without it." The centre never managed to reach its target numbers, with 120,000 visitors in the first year and a much less 50,000 in the second. In September 2003, it finally closed, with reports of staggering debts of over £350,000, closing unsurprisingly soon after the much larger Glasgow Science Centre opened. For 18 years the building has remained abandoned, and for many this seems a huge waste of potential. This is especially troublesome considering Irvine is in the top 15% most deprived communities in Scotland, so wasted building space can have an overwhelming impact. So what is to come of this unique and timeless structure? Rumours have circulated over the years of a golf course or a cinema, but most recently the land has been cordoned off with suggestions of a hotel complex. Hopefully the future brings a better prospect for Irvine's most bizarre architecture, the Big Idea.
Today I'm going to be visiting Pollock House, which sits in the outskirts of Glasgow. The house is located in the beautiful Pollock Country Park. Pollock House was built in 1752 and it was home to the Maxwell family for 6 centuries. The Maxwells have been established in this area since the 1200s. The Edwardian country home was extended in 1890 by Sir John Stirling Maxwell. Prior to the house being built, it was thought that they had 3 castles in the area. None of the castles remain today, but the stone used for them was most likely the stone that was used to build Pollock House. Sir John Maxwell, the 3rd Baronet, took credit for the building of Pollock House, and he was also responsible for the bridge over the White Cart. Sir John Stirling Maxwell, the 10th Baronet, he was the most well known in the Maxwell family. Until his death, he was very keen for his people to have access to green spaces. So in 1911, he gave access to Pollock Estate to the people of Glasgow. He gave land to the locals for the allotments, and he gave land for the building Pollock Shaw's Borough Hall. And there was also the Sir John Stirling Maxwell School. When he died in 1956, the estate was inherited by his daughter, Dame Anne Maxwell MacDonald. The house was gifted to the city of Glasgow in 1966 by Sir John Stirling Maxwell's daughter, and their family had owned the estate for almost 700 years. It is unsure who the architect was for the house. It was originally thought to have been designed by William Adam, but they now believe he might have only helped with the consult of the design. The ground floor is open to the public. You can then pay for a ticket if you'd then like to see the rest of the house. All the rooms are beautifully decorated and furnished, and there's a larger number of smaller and cosier rooms than you might have expected from such a large home. The house displays a fine collection of antique furniture, silverware, ceramics, and it also has one of the finest collections of Spanish paintings. Pollock Park is 361 acres. It is the largest park in the city of Glasgow. And in 2008 it won the best park in the whole of Europe. It is important to mention that there's been recent reports that has linked some of the Maxwell family to the slave trade. However, as I said before, the park is now owned by the people of Glasgow, and it is still much loved by the public.
Today, I'm visiting a historical monument within my local area, Greening Castle. I'm here at Greening Castle. As you can see, it's perched on top of a cliff. This is situated at the very edge of the South Ayrshire coast on the southwest side. Its location provides fantastic scenery, as it is a stunning view of the beach nearby. Greening Castle is currently in a state of ruins, but its rich history gives it significance. The site of the castle has been used for defence for thousands of years. There was a 0.4 Hedeka promontory fort, which was there before Greening Castle. As early as the 12th century, a moat and bailey castle was built within the inner defences of this fort. This was owned by Roger de Scalbrock, who was an Anglo-Norman knight known as the Earl of Carrick. He later handed over the castle to the monks of Melrose Abbey. The church was in possession of the castle until the 15th century. In the 15th century, Greening Castle was owned by the Davidsons. During that time, the castle was 3 stories and the original entrance was on the first floor in the southeast wall. The first floor was known as the Great Hall, which had 4 walls and a large fireplace. The second floor was one large room, and the third floor was partly contained within the roof space and lit by dormer windows. In 1588, Greening Castle was sold to John Kennedy of Baltersain Castle, whose family became the largest landowners in southwest Scotland. He remodelled and extended the castle in the late 16th century. John Kennedy added many new features to the castle, such as a new second entrance at ground level on the north side of the tower and a 3-storey wing. He also built a Barmcombe Wall, which was used for defence. There was a gatehouse in the middle of the Barmcombe Wall, which had a ditch directly in front of it. Greening Castle was once home to around 100 residents and their animals. They lived in wood and wattle thatched roof dwellings in a village built at the castle. The roof dwellings had features such as storage barns, stables, barracks, brewhouses, and shelters for livestock. This was kept separate from John Kennedy and his household, who lived within the castle. The villagers would pay rent and fight for the owner of the castle. The ownership of the castle was passed between various members of the Kennedy family. In 1766, it was passed on to Thomas Kennedy, who was the Earl of Cassilis. This is the last known owner of the castle, as around this time the residential use of the castle stopped. It's hard to believe that this building was once a thriving castle, home to a large community of people. However, there is some evidence of this past. Currently, all that is left of Greening Castle is the main tower and the foundations of a larger building next to it. There are also several grassy mounds, which are believed to be where the gatehouse and small village were situated. However, traces of the Barmcombe Wall and ditch can still be seen. The entrance to the castle has been bricked up, as it's not safe to enter. Despite its current condition, I think Greening Castle should be appreciated and regarded as an important historical monument in Ayr. It has a long history and generated many different interests in its time. Attracts the domestic interest due to the castle's ruins and village, and a military interest due to its fort. It also attracts the commercial interest due to its position beside the sea, as merchant ships regularly passed en route to Ayr and trade there.